Welcome to the Long View from Saskatchewan. My name's Alan Friesen. Well, a week or so ago when we met, we talked about the joy and the hope that comes with springtime. Unfortunately, today our subject does not always bring so much joy and hope because it is income tax time in Saskatchewan and the rest of Canada, of course. And if you're like me, you maybe chip away at it a little bit by bit, and then you come to the deadline and you're quickly scrambling to get everything done. Back when I started farming many decades ago, I would take my income tax forms or my income tax into the accountant, which is always a good thing to do. And the problem was that I was making no money, and I thought, if I'm not making any money anyways, I may as well do the taxes myself, which is what I did. Started to learn how to do my taxes on my own, and I've been doing that for the last 40 years or so. The problem is, if you are like me and doing your own taxes, you may have noticed that the tax forms are just getting longer and longer and more difficult every year, to the point that one hardly even knows what you're doing anymore. You just kind of follow the instructions. Enter Exhibit A. This here is my the rough copy of my tax form for 2025, and I counted, there's actually a total of 29 pages that I needed to fill out. Now, just allow me to read a couple of the instructions on one of these pages. If line 23 is negative, enter the amount from line 23 as a positive amount. If line 20 is positive, enter whichever is less, amount from line 20 or line 45. If not, enter 0. Now, what does this even mean? Allow me to enter then Exhibit B. This is the tax form of my mother from the year 1957. Now, back in 1957, my mother was a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. She was responsible for grade 1 to 9. And she apparently that year she taught for 6 months. During that 6 months, she earned $1,350, and she paid $35 in income tax. Now, the amazing thing is, though, that all of her tax form was these 2 pages. In fact, everything that I have had to do in these 29 pages back then could have been completed on the merely 2 sides. So one would think that, considering all of the extra, up to 15 times as many pages to fill out a tax form, one would think that perhaps we're getting so much more value for our money back then. Well, that got me to thinking and doing a little bit of researching. And although I had nothing on hand for 1957, I do have a copy of my grandfather's yearbook of Canada in 1952. And just turning to the section on the Canadian military from that year, I found out that, and I can read some of these statistics for you, the Canadian government at that point was paying for 10,000 personnel being sent to UN forces in Korea. They had shipyards building 14 escort vessels. They were building 14 minesweepers, 5 gate vessels, and an icebreaker. Canada also was busy building at that time 2 different types of fighter aircraft, and the list just went on and on. That was back in 1952. That makes one think. So we now have the form that might take 29 pages. Certainly we must be getting a lot more value for the money. What are we getting for our military today? Well, I haven't heard a lot recently, but I did hear that they're able to now have tampons in the in the men's washrooms. So can't say that we're not getting anything for our hard-earned money that we're sending in to Ottawa. That brings me up to Exhibit D. Now, what exactly are we getting in return for what we send into Ottawa? Exhibit D is a breakdown of constitutional powers in Confederation. Now, that was set out already in 1967. There have been a number of changes or additions over the years. But what you notice as soon as you look at this division of responsibility and powers between federal government and provinces set out in our Constitution back in 1867 is that the federal government is actually responsible for very, very little. You'll notice in the chart that the federal government is responsible for the military, as just mentioned. It's responsible for First Nations. So as you know, they've been doing such a great job on both of those files. And other than that, practically everything else is, we could relegate to the file of bureaucracy that is centered in Ottawa. Look then at the other side, provincial responsibilities and powers, and you'll notice that practically everything that impacts us as individuals falls to the responsibility of the provinces. Things like healthcare, education, policing, that is the administration of justice, and so on. All of those things are responsibilities of the provinces, and the provinces are forced, of course, to provide that service and pay for it. How is it then that every year more and more taxes go to the federal government every year? The forms for income tax get larger and larger, and it seems like year by year the federal government builds up more debt and we get less and less services. Something's got to change. The provinces can't continue to pay everything that is needed by citizens while the federal government is the one bringing in the money. Eventually, something's going to break. But until that time, I guess we'll just have to pretend that we continue to live in a land of peace, order, and good government and go on with our lives. So have fun, Saskatchewan, filling out your tax forms before the deadline. Enjoy the fact that all of your hard-earned money is going to the empire out there in the east. And until next week, stay Saskatchewan and stay free.